if you really understand what you want, why you want it, a lot of the obstacles don't seem as daunting. You can break them down, you can endure the grind to get to the point that you want to be at, but you have to understand why you want to do what you want to do.
Welcome to the Data Career Podcast, the podcast that helps aspiring data professionals land their next data job. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Hello, data friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Data Career Podcast. I'm your host, Avery Smith, and we got an awesome episode for you coming up. It is with my friend, Erick Cuentas, who has a really unique story of going from chemical engineering to data analytics to becoming a career coach and then stepping back into the corporate world as a product manager and a project manager. And it's a really unique story. I think you guys will find Erick's journey quite fascinating and his insights as a career coach working with recruiters and job seekers pretty interesting. There's a few things I really hope you take away from this episode. Number one is the power of networking. In Erick's story and in my story, networking is so important, and it's not as hard as you think it might be. You might be like, I don't know anyone. I'm an introvert. I don't know how to network. Well, Erick and I talk about this. I think we're both pretty introverted, actually, and we talked about you can just serve people. Just serve people in consistent small ways, and it can really pay dividends in the long haul. Number two, we talked about your resume. Your resume is really just a tool to land you interviews. And if you're not getting interviews, the reason is probably your resume. And you can tweak around. You can say anything you want on a resume. Keep in mind, it's just a piece of paper with words on it. So you can tweak, and I'm not saying to lie, but you can literally put whatever you want on a resume. So for example, if you're trying to apply for data analyst jobs or marketing analyst jobs, and you don't have that term on your resume and you're not getting callbacks, try putting it there. See if it works. See if it helps. Let me know if it does. I'd like for you guys to follow up. And the last thing that we talked about is just fear and how fear can prohibit you in your career from moving forward. And a lot of the times it's not rational fear, it's emotional fear. We're afraid of things that we probably shouldn't be. Like for example, if we had to go swimming with sharks, we'd be afraid, right? But if we have to jump in a car, we're not really afraid. But yet, jumping in a car, actually being in a car, is probably more dangerous than swimming with sharks. So there's kind of a difference between what's scary and what's actually dangerous. Posting on LinkedIn is scary, but not posting on LinkedIn, I would consider that dangerous. So that's what you have to look forward to in this episode. Before we hop into it, I would love to tell you guys about some things that I have going on right now. As always, you can come join the Data Analytics Accelerator. I have a webinar down below that kind of explains the whole program. If you guys haven't watched the webinar, please just go watch it. We have a discount code in there as well. It's a good webinar, and I'll teach you guys a lot of things, and I'll talk about the program at the end. Number two, we just launched the Interview Simulator, which is my brand new platform to help you guys practice interview questions before you actually land the interview. So go ahead and check that out. It has a free 7-day trial, so it costs you $0 to sign up and give it a go. Just see if it's for you, see if it's interesting, see if it's helpful. Number three, I just recently launched Job Hunt Shortcut with Asa Howard, all about the job hunt. This is like kind of our philosophy on sending direct messages and networking and your job search and stuff like that. So you guys can check out the link to that down below as well. As always, if you're finding this podcast helpful, please leave us a rating and review. We give you guys free access to a little podcast guide that kind of explains the best episodes of the podcast, as well as we give you guys free access to Avery GPT once you guys have left a review. It takes like 30 seconds and it really helps me because it keeps me motivated and also helps other people like you find the show. So enough logistics for now. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Data Career Podcast. I'm here in person at a new studio with Erick Cuentas. Erick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Avery. Appreciate it.
Erick is an alumni of the Data Analytics Accelerator program. He's also an alumni of the University of Utah Chemical Engineering program, which I went to as well. And he's just overall a good guy and a really interesting guy. So that's why we thought we'd bring him on.
Appreciate it. No, it's good to be here. It's been a while that we've talked, but glad that we're here together now.
Yeah, I'm happy we're here as well. So I want to start off by talking to the people a little bit about your journey. So you've done some pretty interesting things where you were in chemical engineering. Well, first off, you're from Peru, right?
Yeah, Peru.
Okay. So when did you move to the US?
I was 12, so a little after 2000, year 2000,
Okay.
2001, 2002.
Okay. So yeah, you moved from Peru to the US. You studied chemical engineering at the University of Utah. You worked for some chemical engineering companies. Then you joined the Data Analytics Accelerator, got into data analytics, data science, and then you did something really interesting, which I was super proud of you and like just amazed. You actually became like a career coach.
Yep.
And you did that for a little while. And now you're back kind of in the chemical engineering world doing like project management and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a fair synopsis?
Oh, that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So you've done a lot of different things, a lot of cool different things. Today, I want to focus a little bit on what it was like being a career coach and like what did you learn? Because I'm technically a career coach, but I'm very focused on like data analytics.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people who talk about data analytics will just teach you the skills, and then a lot of career coaches will just teach you the career stuff. And so I'm like somewhere in between because like I think you need both kind of going on at the same time. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, just like what it was like being a career coach. What did you learn? What are some of the biggest takeaways from that whole journey? So that's like the most open-ended question I could possibly give you. But I just want to like soak up your experiences.
No, sure thing. So first off, kudos to you actually, because I wouldn't have gone into career coaching if it wasn't for your mentorship for one. That I would say one of the biggest triggers that helped me get out of a lot of situations that helped me stay stuck in my career was when we did a project called Project Screen Time, right? Very, very classic. You just grab data from your phone and figure out where it's going. And for me at that time, I tended to complain quite a bit about my circumstances per se. My biggest excuse was I don't have time, right? Like I know I have to prepare, I know I have to explore different careers. If I want to change, I have to be the one to do it. But my excuse was always I don't have time to do that. So in your program, when we went through Project Screen Time, I actually started doing that, and I found that I was spending a lot of time on my phone. And we did the same thing, right? You gather the data, you analyze it, you categorize, what's useful, what's not. And I found that I was spending, upwards of 20 hours on things that added no value to my life, that they deemed no value. And I decided to cut them. And after some, I guess detoxing, um, it gave me a lot of time back. And I realized now I have time to do some things. So I started tackling other issues, particularly around my career. Finance was another big one. Career clarity was another one. And career clarity, I think, was the trigger of like, now I feel like I've woken up and I have a lot more power than I thought I had. And it opened the world. I could go into just about any career that I wanted to. I wasn't tied to any one piece. And then I noticed people really needed help in a lot of these aspects. And I really enjoy mentoring them because they would reach out, they would ask questions, and what became a kind of like a service and a hobby ultimately became a very strong passion. And so I became a career coach soon after that. But I can go into more detail, but I don't know if you have any questions from the
No,
get-go.
well, one thing I guess I forgot to say at the beginning is you are a networker extraordinaire. And I've known Eric for quite a while, even before I was really into data. Or we met right about where I was like, I actually had my first data analyst job, but I still was looking for like better jobs basically. And you've always been like a really good networker. So we'll talk maybe about some of your networking tips that you have. But that's just one thing I have to say is like you've always like seen opportunities and been able to figure out like, okay, I want to go explore that. And one thing I want to say about you and also, for everyone listening in our audience is I really think life's too short to not have multiple careers. Like it's kind of boring just to have one career. So it's totally okay if you're a career changer. That just means you're an interesting person, you're chasing your passion. And I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. And like you said, if you put your mind to it, I really think you can transfer into any career you want. Now, some of those are going to be harder. Like if you're like 40 years old and you want to be a doctor and you have like an English degree, you're going to be in school for quite a while. But some of them, like data analytics, for example, much faster to pivot, much lower barriers. So I think it's so cool that you were transferring and you're like, I can do anything I want right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's that desire. What do you really want is the question you have to ask yourself and answer honestly. Because if you really understand what you want, why you want it, a lot of the obstacles don't seem as daunting. You can break them down, you can go over them, you can endure the grind to get to the point that you want to be at, but you have to understand why you want to do what you want to do, why you want to be there. And that's the career clarity piece. When I did career coaching, my focus was on helping people overcome fear, because a lot of times we're scared of, like, hey, what if the grass is not greener on the other side, right? What if I change careers and I don't like it? What if this happens? What if I get fired? What if they figure out I'm a fraud? Whatever it might be, there's always a lot of fear. But ultimately, my focus was to help people overcome those fears through preparation, particularly. And one of those was, there's your time, there's your finance, you have to control those. And then the third one, really important, is you have to understand, what you really want, why you want it, where do you want to be. That way, when you take different steps in your career, they are deliberate and not necessarily by chance, right? It's not your employer telling you, this is where I see you one day. In 2 years, you can be in this position, right? You might not want that. You have to know what you want, and that way you can take deliberate action and go to those places.
Yeah, I forgot that you kind of were like, yeah, fearless career coaching was kind of your theme, which is interesting because if you think about it, people are probably a lot of the time scared. Can I actually do this? Is this going to be the right decision for me? And fear is very paralyzing. And so we often don't take action in our lives because of fear. But I'm actually reading this book. It's called The Mountain Is You. I know you're a book guy. I don't know if you've read that one.
No, but I'll look into it.
It's kind of hokey, like self-help book, but it's very direct. And one of the things it says, humans are wired for comfort, not happiness. And so a lot of the times fear is keeping us comfortable, but actually fear prevents us from being happy. And a lot of the times we're feeling these emotions, but these emotions don't even necessarily reflect reality. It's just what we're feeling in the current moment. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And so I like what you said. It's like, okay, well, you're scared to get into a new career. Let's break down, like, why? Oh, it's my finances. Well, why is it your finances? Well, it's because I don't have, what if it goes bad? Well, what if it goes bad? What if you have a 6-month emergency fund? Like, are you okay in that case? Oh, okay, maybe I am okay in that case. And so it was really like you looking at, maybe different parts of their life and being like, why are you feeling this emotion, and what can we do to have you not feel that emotion, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's, to your point, that fear piece totally paralyzes you. And I love that you mentioned it keeps you comfortable, but it doesn't keep you happy. And that's what I found. That's what helped me wake up, because I realized, for one, at work, a lot of times, it wasn't just necessarily a career change, but it was, I saw something, or I wanted to bring an idea or challenge the system because it didn't make sense. But I was like, I don't want to be in anybody's bad list, right? I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to miss out. Is comfort is good, you stay there. But it resulted in mediocrity, I would say, for my personal career perspective. And that didn't bode well with me, because I was thinking, like, I'm working, but I'm not proud of my work necessarily. And so, yeah. And then, when I thought career coaching, right? What do I need to do to prepare? I started to look into the finances. How much do I need? What's my time frame? I broke it down, because if I think immediately, let's make the transition to becoming a career coach overnight, very, very daunting, right? Point A, point B is very far away. You have to break it down every time. What's the first step? Basically, do you demystify and, shine the light in the monster, and you realize, oh, it's not that bad. I mean, there's things you can do to prepare. There is escape paths that you can take if things are not going well. You have your plan B, plan C, and ultimately you realize, yeah, hey, it's if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. You're gonna get a lot smarter, a lot better, more confident. You can do it next time. And yeah, it was pretty liberating to be able to take challenges like that, and take a leap of faith.
Asking what the worst case scenario is in all these situations. It's like, okay, you wanted, to become a career coach. What's the worst thing that could happen? Because it's scary, becoming a career coach. It's scary doing something new. But if you ask yourself, really, what's the worst thing that can happen? I feel like that is the most liberating thing on planet Earth. Like, I can think of so many examples in my life. For instance, with my boot camp students inside the DAA, a lot of the times they're like, what if I apply for this job and I don't get it? And I'm like, well, what if you apply for the job and you're exactly where you're at? Or like, what if I send this cold message? I'm so scared to send this cold message. Well, what's the worst thing that happens? What's the worst thing that happens if you post on LinkedIn? People laugh at you. People you don't really know laugh at you. Like, there's so much more upside. There's so much happiness that's waiting on the other side of fear, that you're just kind of sitting there paralyzed because it's scary. But like, it turns out if you just be like, well, what if it goes terribly wrong? What happens? And you're like, oh, can I live with that outcome? Then you should probably do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk more about like, so fear was a big thing that you saw in a lot of your students, a lot of your clients. They were like almost parallelized to actually like make big moves. What are some other things, common trends that you saw that maybe people misconceptions or myths people kind of believed when it came to changing careers?
So one of them is, what you mentioned is like, what's the worst that can happen, right? The counter to that one is, but what's the best thing that can happen,
Mm.
right? That's a challenge. That's why we do it in the first place, right? Because you have a dream that you want to achieve, and the question is are the results of that dream worth the risk that you're going to take, right? So linked into your point, it's like, hey, yeah, people might not like a post, but you might end up changing somebody's life, and that's what happened with a lot of our comments. A lot of the influencers, thought leaders of today, they make a comment and it just triggers some kind of chain reaction in somebody's thought process that leads them to make decisions and literally change their lives. So yeah, by all means, go in there, share your ideas, take those leaps of faith, and don't let fear hold you back, because it might impact a lot more people than you think. Other trends that I found with people, fear was usually fear of the unknown was probably the biggest one. It was like, hey, we can prepare for the finance, we can prepare for the alternatives, but what if I get in a car crash, right? What if I there's an emergency and my savings are gone? What if the meteor hits my house? Like, there it could happen. I guess statistically there is a chance it could happen, and just that's infinitesimal probability keeps people stuck. Um, what I found though is just with the people that I've seen in my own life, my parents, whether it's God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, there's something out there always looking out for you. And when you're bold enough to take these challenges, a lot of times it's rewarded. Like, hey, there might be a fire, but you're gonna be all right. Like, one way or another, you're gonna be all right. So it's a leap of faith to a degree, but it's something that a lot of times calls you, and you should do it. It's just, are you willing to take that step?
It's true. I mean, we could get hit by a meteor right now, and like that's something that could happen. And it's, but I almost feel like if you live with that thought in your head, you're not really free 100% to like live, and you're really paralyzed a lot of the time. But it's hard, especially hard. We both have kids. When you have kids, all of a sudden you are responsible. I was going to say you feel
Oh yeah.
responsible, but you are responsible for other people other than yourself. And that becomes, obviously a big decision. You don't want to make any decision that would not serve them properly. But I think for a lot of career changers, changing a career is good for them. Like, especially a lot of the people that end up in DAA, we have a lot of Uber drivers or a lot of teachers. And I love my teachers, but like, teacher's a hard job to have kids with. You're in school for like probably 50 hours a week. You're not getting paid that much. When you become a data analyst, all of a sudden your hours go down, your pay goes up, and you could work hybrid, you could work remote. And so like, sometimes those steps you have to take one step back, like a scary step back, to take like one or two or three or four steps forward and do more stuff with your kids. Okay, so that was a lot of the fears.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like when you look at them and their job search, what are some things that they maybe were just doing wrong that they didn't necessarily see? Like some easy things that people, when they're on their job search, they're doing wrong and they just don't realize it.
Yeah, so I think preparation is one of the big one. Resume, people might like it, might not, but it's still a required document.
It
So,
is
even if you don't like it, you have to learn to speak the language.
100%.
So the biggest thing I saw with resumes is people don't tailor the resumes. I mean, it's hard to tailor it to every job. So that goes back to the clarity piece, because you don't have to tailor your resume that much if you're looking for a job that you want.
Mm,
This is a challenge, particularly for new graduates, because out of desperation they want anything, right? they,
yeah,
they want they just want the foot in the door,
yeah,
and so they create a resume that's with everything down to like chess club and dance and whatever
yep,
it might be, just a smorgasbord of every skill they have. The counter to that is, like, you're speaking to everyone, but by doing so you're pretty vanilla, you're not speaking to anybody.
yeah,
And so if you really want a project manager job, your resume has to say project manager. Like, the moment they read your name, the title beneath your name should say project manager,
yeah,
right? Now, a mistake that I see people, career transitioners particularly, make is they feel like because they have not been a project manager, for example, before, they can't claim that title. And the point is, your employer can't give you that title. It's your claim. That's who you are, right? That's the career you've chosen. So if you've done all this work, if you feel confident you can do it, by all means, claim it. Just put project manager. That's what I'm going to, that's my name. That's what I want to be. And then in the next steps, show them, what qualifications you have, what you've done, what skills you can bring to the table. And it's, you have to tailor your resume. That's the first thing I would say when it comes to career and job searching.
I like that because I actually looked over your LinkedIn today or yesterday, and I noticed that all of your titles had changed from when you were in the program because you're trying to go for this project manager job. And so basically all of your career titles were project related, even when I know maybe that wasn't your official company given title, which you can do. And I think that is so important that people realize, because especially with ATS, with the LinkedIn job algorithm, you're 100% right that if your resume, if you're trying to be a data analyst, if you're trying to become a business intelligence engineer, if that term is not on your LinkedIn and is not on your resume, you basically had no chance.
You're filtered out. Yeah.
You have no chance. And at least let's say, and we're not saying lie, like you have to be able to back it up with bullet points that, like, okay, my official title was, for instance, for me, lab technician, but I was analyzing data a ton. So I had bullet points I could put for data analyst, right? And you have to be able to back it up. But here's the thing. If you don't take that leap of faith and that scary step of claiming your own title, you don't get a chance to even defend it. If let's say you say you're a data analyst, even though you're technically not, right? You get to the interview stage, you get past the ATS, right? Then they can decide, the hiring manager or the recruiter can be like, oh, this person's kind of making this up, or, oh no, they're legit. And if they feel like you're legit, they'll call you and they'll be like, hey, are you legit or not? And like you said, if you can confidently have like evidence of how you used project management, for example, for you in your previous roles, then you're golden. At least you have a chance. But if you don't give yourself a chance, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that was feedback I received, because I used to have all my titles, right? Like I was like quality engineer, safety supervisor, production engineer, MES engineer, and none of those relate. But yet in all of those, I had done project management. I had either, led projects myself, I had collaborated with vendors, I had led the program itself, or I was the product owner for whatever it is that we're implementing. And all of those tie in very, very well. So what I did is I put, project manager, but in parentheses, I put my actual title in case they want to know. And then, like you said, the bullet points all basically are project manager related. They're not to my title, right?
Yeah.
So if I did, for example, systems modeling, but that's not related to project management, I'm not going to put systems modeling in there, right? I have to put the things of like, how did my skills and what skills did I use? Did they save time? Did they save money? Did I deliver things on time and within budget, which is what project managers do? So I just pick that language and show the results. I think that's the other key piece is you have to be able to show that the work that you do, the skills that you're bringing are actually a benefit to the company. A lot of people also, this is another misconception, they feel like the job description has requirement A, B, C, D. You need to be able to use this software. You need to be able to do that. You need to have this skill, communication, etc. Those are at least the skills. But you bringing those skills to the company mean absolutely zero if the company can't translate those into a profit. So you have to be able to show how you use those skills to make the company better, whether it's money, time savings. They usually care about those two pretty well.
Yeah, you have to, unfortunately, with companies, you have to quantify how much time did you save, how much money did you save. I always add how many lives did you save, just to try to make it not always about money, but it's usually, unfortunately, about money one way or another. The one thing that I also just wanted to add about titles is, like you said, MES engineer. Where was that at?
Edwards.
Okay. So I'm a chemical engineer, or originally, right? MES. What is MES?
MES is manufacturing execution system.
Okay.
It's digital software.
Basically, this right here is the whole point. Is they gave you, that was the company given title.
Yeah.
So that company given title is not designed to help your career move forward. It's designed to keep you in the well, not to keep you in the org chart, but to organize you inside of an org chart. It's like, oh yeah, that's exactly specifically what he does. But to 99% of the world, that means blah, 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 blah. Like no one knows what that means. And so when you put that on your resume, unless you're trying to go for that exact same role again, you're just confusing people.
Yeah.
Instead, if you can generalize that title into what's a better, I don't even know what a better
So
general.
for that one, it was, I mean, we did a lot of project management, but it was basically, I would say, a software engineer in a way, right?
Perfect.
You're dealing with software and digital manufacturing lines. So
Okay. So something like that, something more simple. Because I had a student, I'll keep their name private, but if you're in Canada and this sounds like you, it is you, where he had like, I can't even tell you how many characters. It was longer than a tweet, I swear. It was like 100 or it was like 200 characters of a title. It was like MSB CFE 54321 engineer. And I was like, you got to change that. You got to generalize that because no one knows what that is except for you and everyone, your coworkers. Like you're the only person on planet Earth that actually knows what that role is. And so these titles that companies give you, they're just, they serve the company and they don't necessarily serve you.
yeah, that's so true.
Anyway, so I had to go back. But yes, I do agree on the bullets. You got to show quantification of money saved, life saved. What else? What other like common mistakes did you see people making?
The job search, the other piece would be so for some reason they will spend a lot of time, right? They'll get their resume and they apply to, they cold apply. That's one thing. I mean, that's not the best way. You want to have a reference, but they blast the resume everywhere. And when they get called back, they stop applying and they just focus heavily on that one golden child, right? That doesn't work because statistically that's the odds are not on your favor, right? Because you still have to go through multiple rounds. You have to compete against others. So what you have to do in that case is don't assume that your resume is working because one person called you.
Sure.
You have to keep working at it. You have to keep filtering it. There is this website that I used. It's called Skill Syncer. It basically allows you to grab the job post, match it against your resume, and say, if this was an ATS, it'll give you a ranking. You usually want like 70, 80%. If you tailor it frequently, eventually your regular average untailored resume for a particular job will be high 60s, low 70s, which is really good. And this is you not touching it at all. It just means you worked at it quite a bit. You tweak it a little bit, get to 80s, and you start getting quite a few calls. And so what you have to do is you get that interview, you keep sending resumes. You're going to keep getting more interviews because now you're stacking the odds in your favor, right? You have multiple interviews, you can have multiple offers, and when the time comes, you can debate. You can decide, okay, I have 3 paths now. Which one best fits me? Which one, if money is your goal, which one gives me the money? Which one gives me the title? Which one gives me the options to move forward? Which one gives me the coworkers that I want to work with? Which one's closer to my house, which one's remote, right? You have multiple options. But if you focus so much on just one, even if you get that, you're stuck with that one. You have no options. So you need to keep applying. And you can always say no. You can always say no to job offers. You can always decline interviews. You can't say no if you don't have those.
It's very important that you mentioned that because I think some people are under the impression, and maybe it's my fault, that I make it sound too easy getting into data, which I do think it's maybe not easy, but it's simple. But you're going to get rejected.
Oh yeah.
Probably hundreds of times. Like that's probably, unless you're like really good at networking, you're probably going to get rejected. You're probably going to get 100+ rejection emails. And you're probably going to get, I don't know, maybe out of those 100, maybe 8 interviews. And you might not go forward with any of those. You might go forward with all 8 of those. Probably not. That's probably not the actual scenario. But like if you get one interview, you got to keep going through the process because that can fizzle out in a second.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said is like, there's still opportunities for you out there. And if you can, one of the power positions, maybe you can speak to this, why this is, I don't 100% get it. But if you tell a recruiter or a hiring manager, hey, I have another interview with another company, they will put you, like, at the airport when there's everyone walking and then there's people walking on like the treadmill thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I always pretend like it's you're playing Mario Kart and you eat the mushroom. They will give you the mushroom and they will fly you through their process. And then if you do that with the other person you're interviewing with, they will also give you the mushroom and expedite the whole process. Yeah. And then let's say we're lucky and both both cases go well. We have offers. All of a sudden you have dueling offers. Man, you tell this company, this is what they're offering me. They raise it. You say, okay, well, this is what this company's offering me. They raise it. That is
We
like
get more.
the most powerful position to be in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that is true. So I found that it was because that was a piece of advice, right? When I was actually fresh out of college, they told me, hey, if they ask you, are you looking for other jobs? You have any other
Yeah.
options? Always say yes, even if it's not. And I never felt right about saying yes when I know it's not true. But when you do have those, it does give you a lot of power. To tell you a story, when I was actually job hunting for my role at Swire, I had actually ended up having about 8 different interviews at the same time. 3 of those went pretty quick. One of them was delaying. It was just like, well, the manager is out of town, etc. It was actually the first one that called me. Swire called me next. And by the time I had interviewed twice with Swire, this particular company reached out to me. I had the first interview. They must have liked me enough. But I told them, it's like, hey, I'm in second round interviews with this other company, and I have another interview, final interview with another company. They scheduled 3 interviews within that week to get me an offer on the weekend, right? And so they had competing offers, but they moved extremely fast because they realized this guy's desirable, right? Like there's other people who want him, and they have fairly decent names, these other companies. So let's get in the pot.
I don't 100% know why that works that way, but it always does. It's kind of like when you're dating, it's kind of like playing hard to get. It's like if this person's single and they have no prospects, you're not really interested in them. But as soon as someone else is interested in them, you're like, oh, I'm interested in them too. And that's awesome. So with Swire, for example, I haven't talked to you about this, so I have no idea
Oh,
what your
you're
answer
fine.
is. I'm hoping I know the answer, but I don't actually know the answer. With Swire, how did you find that job opportunity?
Networking,
Ah,
actually.
phew, that was the answer.
That's exactly. That's
I was hoping you were going to say that, and I was like, I bet you that's how Eric got it,
Yep.
but I didn't. I didn't actually know. Okay, so if you don't mind walking us through like how you got this opportunity, Swire, after coming off from like a corporate career break, you
Mhm.
took some time off to be an entrepreneur and getting back into like the corporate workplace. What type of networking did you do?
Yeah, so I actually had to I had to swallow my own pill, right? Because I'm teaching people how to land these jobs. A lot of my clients are getting them. Every now and then I had a client that was struggling. They would take a bit more.
Mhm.
Some career transitions are just tougher than others.
Mhm.
And so I reached out and say, hey, well, now I'm going to be on the job hunt, and I'm going to have to, take my own medicine, see how that works. So I gave myself 2 months because that was basically the time frame that I had scheduled, and that's basically what I felt was this is a good amount, 2 months to find the job. And so I started looking for every job that had project manager with the filters I wanted.
Okay.
Right. So first step,
On
I'm
LinkedIn or
LinkedIn,
okay,
Monster. It was a Monster. It was
what
there's other.
other job
Yeah.
boards?
Basically, I'm trying to find the jobs I want, not waste my time on jobs that I don't.
Yeah.
So I filtered those out at first, very slow. First week, I was finding maybe like handful of jobs, and I was like, I'm applying to 6 a week. This is not going to last good
Yeah.
in 12 months. But by actually putting that effort and learning the filters and learning what I'm doing, I started to actually realize like this is the jobs that I want, and they started to appear more because that's what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
If you look for something, you see it more often. If
Yep.
you're eyeballing a Tesla, you start to see Teslas everywhere.
Yep.
Same thing happened with the job hunt. After that, I started to look for people that I know in the companies. Everybody that I talked to, they basically knew Eric is looking for project management, right? Not engineering, not leader, not executive, nothing like that. Project management. That's what it is. So they basically branded me as project manager. Some of them would reach out to me for Swire, particularly. I had a friend who was a project manager. He got let go, and I reached out to him, said, "Hey, actually, I he just got let go." So I reached out and I said, "Hey, there's some companies I want to share with you resources. You're a friend of mine. Let me share with you the companies I'm looking at, the roles. This is some of the tips I found." And again, just helping somebody out,
This
right?
is the type of guy that Eric is. He's taking his competitor and being like, "Hey, here's all my job leads."
And so yeah, so I reached out to him, and he gave me a lead. He said, "It's like, hey, this is somebody that I worked with before." He ended up getting an offer fairly quickly, and this friend of his, a connection, he had a recruiting agency. So I scheduled a time. He met with me and he said, I like your vibe. Let me put you in contact with my recruiter. And I ended up actually being really good friends with his recruiter. We just clicked, and he told me of this potential offer, or I mean this job. And it wasn't project manager, though you were doing a lot of project management. You had to do quite a bit of stakeholder management as well. but it was basically IT. It was really interesting. And based on the qualifications that I bring, all of these things, they just saw it's like, I think you'll be great. So let me take a look at this. And I started to go through the process. It wasn't necessarily a job I was looking for, but it ended up being a really, really good fit. And so, but it was through networking. Just talk to one person, reach out to another, and networking is always about looking out for the other guy, right? The moment they know that you're genuinely looking out for them, they will genuinely look out for you.
I love that. I think a lot of people think networking equals, you know, asking for a job, basically. But what I think what happens is they ask for a job and then they get served humble pie, basically. But what happens if you serve first, they will ask you for a job, like work for me. And that's so hard to get because it's like, oh, in order to receive, I have to give, which is kind of like a counter
Intuitive. It's kind of
counterintuitive. I mean, we're both Christian. That's like what Jesus says, right?
Yep,
He's
yep.
like, serve others and then you'll get. And you're like, are you sure, Jesus? Like, that seems counterintuitive.
Sure.
But I think it's like kind of like the same in networking because had you been like me and thought, man, I'm competitive. This person's a competitor. Why would I help them? You wouldn't have gotten this opportunity,
No,
basically.
not at all.
Yeah. So service is networking.
Yep, exactly.
And to make it like more applicable for some of these people who are listening, they're like, okay, well, what can I do to serve? I mean, I guess they could do the same thing as you. Hey, I'm looking for a data job as well. Here's what I've learned. And you never know what that could be. What are some other examples that people can do to serve, do you think?
I think sharing your resources is amazing. Sometimes it doesn't have to be around if you're transitioning careers, for example, right? You might not have that many resources in the career you're transitioning to.
Mhm.
But you have to understand that the people that you're networking with,
Mhm.
that's not their whole life. Their
Sure.
career is not project management or data science. They have other hobbies. They might like to dance, they might like
Sure.
to go climbing, they might like to go hiking. If you take a genuine interest in them, you start asking questions like, what do you do in your spare time, right? And they'll start telling you, it's like, hey, I like to go hike. All of a sudden you're like, hey, have you gone into this particular hike? It's
Mm.
like the best one I've had so far. It's pretty close. You just share knowledge, share resources, and they start to connect because you're giving them something that they want, even though it's not in that field that you think they want. But they do care about,
You
right?
mean there's more than life than just career?
Oh, exactly, right?
Shocker. I didn't new to me, I guess. Or there's resources inside the field, like podcasts. You could share
Oh yeah,
a podcast like this podcast.
exactly.
You could share this podcast with your friends. Please do so we can be bigger and have cool guests like Eric and pay for these studio fees that we're paying for. I love that. Sharing resources is really easy. I think commenting on LinkedIn super easy. Commenting on LinkedIn is really big.
Mhm.
I get honestly, if I'm being honest, I get probably 5 DMs a day from people from all around the world asking to intern for me, to work for me, all this stuff, right? From all over the world, India, Nigeria, US, Canada, South America, like literally all over. And unfortunately, most of the time I just end up ignoring the messages because I get too many to respond. If I do respond, it's like, no, sorry, I don't have any openings. This person has been commenting on my LinkedIn for 6 months. He's never asked me a thing. He's just left really good comments. I have no idea who he is. He just leaves really good comments every single day on my LinkedIn. And so finally, I was like, I want to meet this guy. No idea who he is. Lives in Nigeria,
Mhm.
and I've hired him.
Oh, there you go.
I made a position for him because I was like, this person has served me for 6 months. He's never asked me once for anything. He's never asked me for a job. And boom, now he has a job because he served first instead of asking first.
Yeah.
And just came from LinkedIn comments. Like that could have been anyone listening to this. That could have been anyone on LinkedIn, And it was a huge investment for him because, like, I mean, not that big of an investment. It's just commenting on LinkedIn. It takes 30 seconds,
Hmm.
but the little investment every day eventually paid off. Now there's a chance that I didn't hire him, but it's still worth the shot. I think, it's not like it's like painful to comment. It doesn't cost him any money. It costs him a little bit of time, but like even commenting on LinkedIn, sending messages on LinkedIn, that can be huge.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you hit on a very, very powerful point there, and that's that a lot of times it's the small things that we don't give credit to that they make a big difference, right? It doesn't have to be, hey, let me drop a little nugget or let me bring you a car or something like that, right? It's small consistency that makes you visible, and more than anything, it lets people know you're there, like you're there to serve, because you're doing the small things that someone who has ulterior motives wouldn't necessarily invest and do. So it shows a lot about your character when you genuinely serve in small ways but meaningful ways.
It's so impactful because it seems counterintuitive, but it can make all the difference. Okay. So we've talked about a little bit about networking. We've talked about how to get over the fear of transitioning into a new career. We've talked about a little bit about your resume, how it's really important to have the title you actually want. You need to also have really good bullets that, one, match the job you're trying to go for, but two, that quantify into money what you basically did, which can be hard. Even like I have a lot of teachers and it's like, oh, I taught 5th grade. That's their bullet point. But it's like, you can turn that into, I managed 40 clients and a, I don't know, 6-figure budget to help clients achieve new educational levels. That wasn't my best bullet point every time. But the point is, like, you can kind of abstract numbers out of most jobs. What other tips do you have for people who are looking to transition into a new career?
I think if you haven't already started quantifying it, start doing that now, because a lot of people look back in their career and they're like, I don't know how to quantify it, and honestly they don't. It's pretty far back, right? But if you start where you are today, right? I mean, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, but the next time is today. I think I've heard you say that.
Yeah,
for
sure.
That's the thing, right? Like, start to look at your job where you are right now and ask yourself the questions: what are the results that I'm bringing that my next employer will want, right? So when it comes to, I speak project manager lingo now. When it comes to teachers, right, you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders. You have people, kids, who are very resistant to change. Project management is about change, right? You have to influence without authority, because you have to deal with their parents if they don't like some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And you have to also take care of the stakeholders, which are their parents. I mean, ultimately, the Board of Education gives you the rules. There's your sponsors, right? Like, it just translates so well to everything you're doing. And a lot of times we don't see it. We're like, I'm just a teacher. I just teach 5th grade. But you're like, you're managing people, some very difficult people. And the corporate world is not that different. Sometimes they act like 5-year-olds.
True.
Right? And you can bring those skills. Show them how you done it. Show how you inspire change. Show how you make the change, or how you made an impact in the way one person did something, somebody that was difficult. They'll, that's project manager. Like, sometimes you change the mind of one executive and it makes a big difference in the company. You didn't do it, but you catalyzed the change that made a big impact.
So I think we have now 2 homework assignments to give all of our listeners. The first one is to share a resource, maybe this podcast, with someone
Hopefully, yeah.
that they can, network with and team up with. And the second one is to think about what you currently do and how can you quantify it? How can you answer how much money, how many lives, how many hours, how many hours saved? Like, just think about like numbers, what numbers fit in your job, and just do it now. Just get it over with. It might take you half hour. You can play with ChatGPT. I think this is a great opportunity to use ChatGPT to help you brainstorm. How can I quantify these current bullets? Like, that's our homework assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just tailor it. Figure out what your next employer will want, what's relevant to that role, and bring some numbers to it. It can be people, it can be dollar signs, and they don't have to be big. They just have to be there.
Numbers.
Right? They just have to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You as a teacher might not deal with millions of dollars, but what I found in my career is not so much how much you're handling, but how well you're handling it. Right? It's, can people trust you to take great care of the things that they're going to give you stewardship over?
Yeah.
And if you can show that, hey, I was given this budget and this is what I made of it, they'll give you more, because that's what great leaders do. They'll give you more because they realize you have potential.
Okay, perfect. Eric, where can people go to connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, so I used to be on LinkedIn all the time. Now I'm there more sporadically. But if you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn is still a pretty good place. Other than that, I'm, reach out to Avery. He knows
okay.
he knows how to find me.
He's in Utah too. You can go visit him in Utah. But yeah, check out his LinkedIn. We'll have the link in the description down below. He recently posted a pretty cool picture of him bouldering, which was pretty sweet. And just to like parlay that off of, earlier we talked about, networking with people and like talking about their hobbies. So if you're a bouldering expert, Eric's pretty new, right? I mean, when did you start bouldering?
About 6 months ago.
All right, so he's 6 months in. So if you're like a bouldering expert,
Oh yeah,
you want to send him, and I know you send him bouldering routes or I don't know, shoes, or I don't know.
oh yeah, chalk is so anybody that cares about climbing,
Uh-huh.
chalk super cheap.
Uh-huh.
You always need it.
Uh-huh.
Unicorn dust is number one, so just give that gift to somebody, and that's
Or if you know a better chalk than unicorn dust.
there we go.
You gotta tell Eric about
Exactly.
it. Eric, thanks so much, Eric, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Avery. I appreciate it.
I hope you guys got a lot out of that episode. I know that I did. Remember, have the term that you want in your job search on your resume. Make sure you're networking. Small, consistent service goes a long way. And don't let fear prevent you from taking the next step in your career. If you're ready to take that next step, I'm here to help. Check out the links in the show notes down below. Happy to talk to any of you guys. Hope this podcast is helpful, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.